Think about this for a second. A guy scams America out of hundreds of millions of dollars, serves less than 2 years in a cushy prison, and then becomes a global superstar because of it. It sounds insane, right? Well, let's dive into the story of Jordan Belfort, the real Wolf of Wall Street, and unpack how his crimes somehow became celebrated entertainment. And right off the bat, we get this quote from the man himself. This really gets to the core of it all, doesn't it? It's this blurry line he draws between being a criminal and being, well, just like everybody else. And it forces you to ask, why are we so drawn to these people who just tear up the rulebook? So how does someone even become the Wolf of Wall Street? Where does that incredible, relentless drive for money actually come from? To get that, we got to go way back, long before Wall Street was even on his radar. Even as a kid, you could see the hustle was there. I mean, at 16 years old, he pulled in 20 grand in one summer selling Italian ice on the beach. That's pretty wild. But then he tries a quote-unquote real business, selling meat and seafood door to door, and it just implodes. It goes bankrupt fast. And that's the real takeaway here, you see. It was never about the ice. It was never about the meat. For Jordan Belfort, the only thing that ever mattered was the sale. And this one sentence from the dean of his dental school, this is the moment everything pivots. It's his very first day, and he hears this. If you're here to get rich, you're in the wrong profession. Belfort literally stood up and walked out, right then and there. He wasn't there to fix teeth, he was there to get rich, and that moment just solidified it. He needed a path with no ceiling. So the meat business fails, what's next? Well, Belfort has this kind of epiphany. He realizes his superpower isn't in making a product. It's his uncanny ability to sell a product. Anything. So he lands on Wall Street at a firm called LF Rothschild and gets his first taste of that real big-time money. And then, bam. Black Monday, 1987. The market crashes, and he's out on the street. Now, for most people, that would be the end of the story. But for Jordan Belfort, it was just the opportunity he was looking for. Yeah. See, after getting fired, he didn't even try to get back into some legitimate old-school firm. No. He decided, you know what? I'm going to build my own kingdom. And that kingdom, that was Stratton Oakmont, the company that would become the engine for one of the biggest, most audacious frauds in modern history. And the entire scam really begins with the name, Stratton Oakmont. It sounds so powerful, doesn't it? So established, like it's been there for 100 years. Trustworthy. The reality? It was a chaotic boiler room in a frickin' strip mall. The whole thing was a lie, a mirage from day one. So who do you hire to staff your fake, prestigious firm? You'd think maybe some Ivy League finance grads, right? Nope. Belfort built his army from local bars and neighborhood hangouts. He recruited bartenders, dropouts, guys who were just hungry. See, he didn't want people who knew the rules and might ask questions. He wanted raw ambition that he could mold into his own personal army of selling machines. And how did he mold them? He gave them his secret weapon, straight-line persuasion. Now, this wasn't just some sales script. It was a full-blown psychological weapon. The whole system was designed to just bulldoze any doubt, any hesitation, and railroad a potential client from hello straight to a yes before they even had a second to think about what was happening. Okay, so he's got his army of closers. He's armed them with the straight line. Now we get to the core of the whole operation. Let's break down the actual scam that would make them all obscenely, disgustingly wealthy. The vehicle for this whole scam was the penny stock. We're not talking about blue chip stocks like Apple or anything you've heard of. These are cheap, super high-risk shares from tiny, obscure companies. And the reason they were so perfect for Belfort is that they were basically the Wild West of the stock market. Almost zero regulation, which made them incredibly easy to manipulate. The pump and dump scheme was it was deceptively simple and absolutely devastating. Here's how it worked. First, Belfort and his inner circle would secretly buy up huge chunks of a worthless penny stock for basically nothing. Then came step 2, the pump. He'd unleash his sales floor to create this tidal wave of fake hype, making it sound like the next big thing. And as thousands of regular people, teachers, mechanics, you name it, bought in, the price would just skyrocket. Then step 3, the dump. At the absolute peak of the frenzy, Belfort and his buddies would sell every single share they owned, cashing out for millions. And finally, the collapse. The stock would instantly crash back to zero, leaving all of their clients holding completely worthless paper. I mean, you just can't run an operation that big, that loud, and that illegal forever. It's impossible. The sheer excess and chaos started to attract the wrong kind of attention. not just from law enforcement, but from inside the firm itself. The whole thing was starting to rot. And when I say rot, I mean it was rotting from the inside out. Drug use went from being a party favor to basically a professional requirement just to keep up the insane pace. Fights were breaking out constantly over commissions, and to hide the mountains of cash, Belfort set up this complex web of offshore accounts, laundering money through anyone he could. It was pure, unadulterated chaos. And then the end came, and it came fast. By '94, the SEC was already watching them closely. Then in '96, in this just unbelievable moment of pure hubris, Belfort literally sinks his own massive yacht in a storm, high on drugs. A few months after that, the FBI finally raids the office. But even then, he couldn't stop. While he's already under investigation, he illegally wires millions more to a Swiss bank. That was pretty much the final nail in the coffin. But the story doesn't end with his arrest. Oh no. In fact, for Jordan Belfort, this is where it gets truly unbelievable. He somehow managed to turn his spectacular downfall into a brand new, and you could argue even more profitable, career. So he's facing decades behind bars. What does a master salesman do in that situation? He makes the ultimate sale. He sells out everyone. He flipped, became the FBI's star witness, and systematically turned on his partners, his friends, the very employees he had trained himself, all to save his own skin. And what did he get for his cooperation? For orchestrating a scam that cost over $100 million in losses? He got just 22 months. And not in some hardcore federal prison. No, he served his time in a minimum security camp, a place where he spent his days playing tennis. Just let that sink in. And his next chapter started in the most unlikely way. In that prison camp, his cellmate was the comedian Tommy Chong. Yes, from Cheech and Chong. After hearing all of Belfort's wild stories, Chong gave him the piece of advice that would change his life forever. You gotta write this down, man. And this brings us to the real painful legacy of this story. Just look at this comparison. Belfort got 22 months of tennis. His victims, the people who lost their life savings, their retirement funds, their homes, they were left with basically nothing. The court ordered him to pay back $110 million. To this day, the vast majority of that is still unpaid. And this is the ultimate mind-bending irony. The crime was devastating, fraud, money laundering, ruining thousands of lives. But the reward for that crime? A best-selling book, a blockbuster Scorsese movie, and a whole new career as a motivational speaker, teaching sales ethics of all things. He didn't just escape real justice, he monetized his own criminality. So we have to end on this one big question. Belfort's story isn't just about a charismatic con man. It's really about us. Why are we, as a culture, so quick to celebrate the predator and completely forget about his victims? It's a question worth thinking about long after the credits have rolled.